I hope you'll agree with me, as many others do, that the agricultural sciences and related disciplines fit within the idea of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And for that reason, I wanted to go ahead and include this chapter in this week's module about enhancing student success in STEM. This will be a brief video because there's so much more that has been written about this topic that I can't really do it justice, but I want to introduce it because it could be a really nice start for your Scholarship of Teaching and Learning project proposal, or even your class teaching demonstration that you'll do by the end of the semester. So if you work in this area and you consider yourself part of STEM, I hope that this resonates with you. And for those who are a little bit more like me on the social sciences, we're still in the sciences, and so I think we can find a way to fit within this domain as well. So by the end of this video, I want you to be able to discuss the need to enhance student success in STEM. You could probably do that now. But we need to identify the challenges to effective STEM education, and the book provides many more studies and justification for that than I will. But then we want to describe some strategies to improve STEM education and recognize that that can be done through enhanced teaching efforts and focus on student success. So again, reflect on that idea of student success. Why is this so important in the STEM disciplines? And so if you find that you identify with this area, you can probably think of some things very quickly. Again, the book talks a lot about why STEM is so important and why we should be investing in better teaching efforts and improved student success efforts. It helps improve, innovation as we're looking for new scientific solutions to problems. It keeps us competitive on a global scale. And, improving scientific literacy of future voters or current voters is really important, as we need to maintain a high level of trust in science, or encourage a high level of trust in science. As the book, and as you may know or read, there are many challenges to doing so. Many students are arriving to college unprepared to take on the expectations in these areas, so they don't feel prepared to do so. With that lack of confidence, they don't find their sense of belonging or feel they have the self-efficacy to be successful, and so they don't persevere and persist through their major if they start in that. There is in these disciplines an over-reliance on traditional lecture modes and wanting to leverage passive learning, which we know is not as successful as active learning. But many of the people who work in this area were not trained as teachers. So they're teaching the way they were taught, and there's certainly a number of efforts to help them integrate more active learning techniques in their classroom. This attrition of STEM majors is especially prominent among underrepresented groups, and so there's a need to build support around all STEM majors in addition to all college students to make sure that they can be successful, particularly for those in those underrepresented groups. So the book provides some general advice for enhancing STEM learning, and again, that chapter does a really good job of this, so I'm just highlighting some key points. As I've mentioned, using active student-centered learning strategies is really effective in enhancing STEM learning, more so than just lecture alone. We can enhance STEM learning by fostering problem-solving, collaboration, and other opportunities through inquiry-based learning, and then the others that fit under that category, like problem-based learning, project-based learning, case method, and so on. We need to be able to address misconceptions about the subject matter that students may have brought with them by being underprepared to take on that course load, or perhaps they haven't been using the best sources of information. So that's something that would enhance STEM learning. We also need to make it relevant, applied, and connected to real world problems, because that real world, realistic problem solving helps increase motivation and retention of the information. If students see how they can use that information in the future, they feel more motivated to learn the material. We also need to encourage metacognition. So again, thinking about thinking, reflecting upon what are we doing well and where can we improve. And that's from a student's perspective as well as the teachers. So the book highlights two specific things that can be done to improve lab instruction. And that was around starting the lab and then designing the lab. And there are a number of resources here at Texas Tech to help people who teach in these type of environments integrate more active learning and then how to support students in that lab environment. But when you're starting the lab, you need to make sure it's aligning with the lecture portion of the course. And that's difficult when there's a number of lab sections and they may not be taught by the same person. Realistically, they're not taught by the same person that does the lecture. So there's a need to make sure that those things are aligned. Students need to be able to connect what they're doing in the lab with the bigger scientific picture. So what does this activity mean in the bigger scheme of things? You need to explain the objectives of the lab and what are the major concepts they're going to get out of that. That's just a best practice for any type of instruction. And then if there's time, reviewing previous material, whether that's material from the lecture or what they did in the previous lab and how that builds on what they're doing in the current lab. When you're designing the lab, if you can reflect the inquiry-guided learning model, such as posing a question and then letting students work through perhaps guided steps to come to the solution, that is a more active learning strategy that will engage them. Focus on students' critical thinking, decision-making, and complex reasoning skills. When possible, if you can have them work in groups, that will foster teamwork and collaboration, and students overall are more motivated, and it helps support students when they can work in a group. The book highlights a number of modern technology resources, online tools, techniques, and so if you can incorporate those, and we know that there are some real constraints in terms of budget and time to do so, but where possible, that will help students feel more engaged in lab instruction. So that was a really quick overview of this topic. It's really important, but I think it's one of those that if this is something that resonates with you, I want you to explore this through other assignments in the course or just through your own interest in improving STEM instruction. Because STEM student attrition can be influenced by a number of factors, but what we do as instructors to integrate active, inquiry-guided, or collaborative learning can help address that problem.